Welcome back to Tech Pulse. Today we're doing a deep dive on HAProxy. Now, if you're not really, a techie, the name might sound kind of scary, but stick with us. We'll break it down so that by the end of this, you'll be able to at least hold your own in a conversation about HAProxy. So to kick things off, what exactly is HAProxy?
Well, imagine you're trying to get onto like a really popular website. Like during a huge sale, everyone's trying to get on at the same time and the website starts to like slow down. Or even crashes. HAProxy is what comes in to save the day. It's like a super efficient traffic cop. It makes sure all those requests, from all those people trying to get on the site, get to the right place without causing like a digital traffic jam.
So it's like a traffic manager for websites.
Mm.
But how does it actually, prevent those crashes and slowdowns?
So HAProxy works by spreading out the incoming traffic across a bunch of different servers. Think of it like a restaurant with a whole team of chefs. If all the orders just went to one chef, they'd be swamped right. But if you spread those orders out among all the chefs, then things run way smoother.
So a proxy is basically taking those website requests and deciding which server can handle them best.
Exactly. It looks at things like, how much capacity each server has, how busy they are at that moment, even the location of the person making the request, all to make sure that each request is sent to the server that can handle it best.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I was looking at the stuff for this deep dive, and
Yeah.
it looks like HAProxy is used by some pretty big names,
Yeah.
like Reddit and Twitter, even GitHub.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular choice. There are a couple reasons for that. For one, it's free and open source, which means anyone can use it and modify it, but it's also really powerful and efficient. It's written in this programming language called C, which is known for its speed and its ability to like really use computer resources well, which is really important when you're dealing with a ton of internet traffic.
Okay, so we've got a free, super efficient traffic manager that can handle huge amounts of data. I think I'm getting it. But the sources mention these things called front ends and back ends. What are those all about?
Okay, so let's stick with that restaurant analogy we were talking about before. The front end is like the host stand at the restaurant. It's the first point of contact for incoming requests, kind of like those customers coming into the restaurant. The host stand greets them and shows them to a table. And that table represents a server in the back end.
Okay, so the front end is like the director figuring out where each request needs to go. And then the back end is where the actual work happens.
Yep, you got it. The back end is like the kitchen where you have all those servers working together to fulfill the requests, just like all those chefs prepping meals.
Okay, front end's the director, back end's where the action is. But how does HAProxy decide which server in the back end should handle each request? Does it just pick randomly?
No, not at all. It uses different methods called load balancing modes to figure out the best server for each request. One of the most common ones is called round robin, where it basically just goes down the line of servers. First request goes to server 1, the second request goes to server 2, and so on.
Okay, so it's about keeping things balanced so that no one server is working too hard.
Exactly, but there are other modes too. Like it can also look at how much work each server is already doing its processing power, even the location of the user making the request, all to make sure things are running as smoothly as possible.
This is starting to make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So a proxy is like this really smart traffic manager that can handle a ton of different situations to make sure websites run without a hitch. But why should I care? Like, unless I'm running some huge website, does this even really affect me?
That's a good question, and the answer is a big yes. Think about all the websites you use every single day. Social media, online shopping, streaming services, news sites. A lot of them rely on HAProxy or similar technologies to stay online and function the way they're supposed to, especially when they're getting a lot of traffic.
So even if we don't see it, HAProxy is working behind the scenes to make sure our online experience is good.
Exactly. It's making sure things are fast and smooth and reliable. And it goes even further than that. HAProxy is also a big player in website security. It helps with that HTTPS thing you see in your browser, that little lock icon. That means your connection to that website is encrypted. So it's way harder for hackers to steal your data.
I had no idea HAProxy was involved in that. So it's like a security guard for websites too.
You could say that. It's like a gatekeeper controlling who can get to different parts of a website. And it can even scan for malicious activity, to protect the site from attacks.
This is really interesting. It's amazing to think about all this complex stuff that's happening behind the scenes. To make the internet work the way we expect it to, we've learned a lot about HAProxy so far, but there's still so much more to explore.
It really is amazing all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we never even think about. But let's dig a little deeper into how HAProxy manages all that traffic. We talked about load balancing, but there are actually different ways to do it, and each one has its own pluses and minuses.
Okay, yeah. One of the sources mentioned TCP mode and HTTP mode. What's the difference between those?
All right, so let's go back to that highway analogy for a second. In TCP mode, HAProxy is like a basic traffic director. It just looks at the car's license plate, which is like the IP address and port, and then it directs the car to the right exit based on that information.
So it's make sure cars going to a certain city take the right exit off the highway.
Exactly. Now with HTTP mode, it's a bit more advanced. It's like that traffic director can actually see inside the cars and see where the people are going. It looks at the data within the request, like the URL and stuff, and then it can make a smarter decision about where to send that traffic.
So it's like knowing not just the city, but the exact address the car is going to. That seems a lot more precise.
It is. HTTP mode gives HAProxy a lot more flexibility and control. It can make decisions based on what's actually in the request, which is super useful for routing traffic to different servers based on what's being requested, like images or videos or whatever.
So these different modes basically add layers of intelligence to traffic management.
Yeah.
But it all sounds pretty technical. Are there any like real-world examples of how these modes are used?
Oh, definitely. Think about a big e-commerce site like Amazon. They probably use a proxy to manage all their traffic and make sure everyone has a good shopping experience. So when you're just browsing products, HAProxy might use TCP mode to quickly send you to a server that can handle those basic requests. But then when you go to checkout and enter your payment information, it might switch to HTTP mode to double check that everything's legit and then send you to a server specifically designed for secure transactions.
Well, that's a great example. So it's not just blindly sending traffic around. HAProxy can adapt to different situations. But this makes me wonder, how does HAProxy know which servers are available and how much traffic they can handle?
That's where configuration comes in. System administrators set up a proxy and give it all the details about the servers, like how much capacity they have and all that important stuff.
Yeah.
It's like giving the traffic director a map of the whole city, showing all the roads and intersections.
So HAProxy needs instructions, but it can be customized for different needs.
Exactly. And that's where things get even more interesting. Remember we were talking about HAProxy as a security guard?
Yeah.
Well, system administrators can set up these things called ACLs, which stands for access control lists. These are basically rules for who can access what parts of the website.
So it's like that bouncer at a club, checking IDs and making sure only certain people get in.
Yep. With ACLs, you can block access to sensitive areas like an admin panel, or even restrict access based on where the user is, what device they're using, even what browser they're on. It's a super powerful way to boost security and control who can see what on a website.
This is incredible. It sounds like HAProxy can be customized to handle almost anything. I'm
Yeah.
starting to see why so many big websites use it. But speaking of security, you mentioned HTTPS earlier. And how HAProxy can help with that. Can you remind me how those two things are connected?
Sure. So HTTPS is all about making sure that the communication between your browser and the website is secure. It uses this thing called TLS, which is like a secret code that scrambles the data being sent back and forth. So if someone tries to snoop, they can't read it.
All right, so HTTPS keeps our data safe from prying eyes. But how does HAProxy help with that?
HAProxy can handle the actual encryption and decryption of the traffic. It's called TLS termination. HAProxy acts like a middleman. It decrypts the traffic coming from your browser and then re-encrypts it before sending it to the backend servers. And it can actually make things faster because HAProxy is really good at doing all that encryption stuff.
So HAProxy is basically taking on the extra work of encrypting and decrypting so that the servers can focus on what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. But there's also something called TLS pass-through, where HAProxy just forwards the encrypted traffic directly to the servers without messing with it. This might be better if the servers can handle the encryption themselves, or if the data is super sensitive and you don't want anything touching it.
So it's a choice between having HAProxy do the encryption or letting the servers handle it directly.
Right. The best way to do it depends on what the website needs and how important security is.
This is all really fascinating. We've covered so much ground here, from basic traffic management to all this advanced security stuff. I feel like I could write a whole book about HAProxy now.
Huh. Well, it's clear that HAProxy is a super versatile and powerful tool, and we've only just scratched the surface of what it can do.
I know it feels like we've opened up this whole new world of possibilities, but I think it's time to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We've talked about how HAProxy works, but what does it all mean for the internet as a whole? What are the implications of having this kind of technology working behind the scenes?
It really is something to think about. The internet has become like such a vital part of our lives. We use it for everything, communication work, entertainment shopping, you name it. And as more people come online and we depend on it even more, the need for speed and reliability and security just keeps growing.
Right. We expect websites and apps to load, instantly handle our information safely, and be available all the time.
Hmm.
We've gotten so used to things working a certain way that any little hiccup is super frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why technologies like HAProxy are so important. They're like the invisible backbone that keeps the internet running smoothly. They help websites deal with tons of traffic, prevent those annoying outages, and just make sure everyone has a good and safe experience online.
So it's not just about making websites faster, it's about making sure the whole internet can keep up with us as we do more and more online.
Exactly. And it's not just a proxy doing all the work, it's part of this whole network of technologies, servers, databases, caching systems, content delivery networks. They all work together to create the web we use every day.
That's incredible. It's like this giant intricate machine with all these different parts working together to keep everything running. But what happens if one of those parts breaks down? No technology is perfect. So what if a proxy itself runs into a problem?
That's a really good point. System administrators put a lot of work into making sure that HAProxy is set up correctly, and they keep an eye on it and update it regularly to try to avoid any issues. They also set up redundancy, which basically means having backups ready to go. If the main system goes down, it's like having a spare tire in your car. You hope you never need it, but it's good to have it just in case.
So it's all about having those safety nets in place to keep the internet running smoothly, even when things go wrong.
Exactly. And people are always working to make these systems better. Developers are constantly trying to make HAProxy even more efficient and secure and reliable so it can handle whatever we throw at it.
This has been such an interesting deep dive. I
Yeah.
feel like I have a whole new understanding of how the internet works and how important all this technology is that we never even see.
It really is amazing. And as we use the internet more and more, it's important to understand how these systems work and the role they play in our online world.
I completely agree. And for our listeners, I hope this deep dive has made you curious about the tech that's all around us. Even if you never have to set up a proxy yourself, knowing how it works can give you a better sense of how the internet functions.
Definitely. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one building the next big website or app. And you'll need a proxy to help you manage all that traffic.
That's a great point. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into HAProxy. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another exciting look into the world of technology.